This week on the I Love Funny Women podcast.
Everybody could tell from the get-go I was a little lesbian girl. I had a chili bow haircut, wore ties on picture day. He said, well, what would you do if you can change what you want to do? I said, I'd be a comedian. What gets me off is you laughing at me or with me. For that very moment, I forget, how sad I am about my sister.
Welcome to the I Love Funny Women podcast with your host, Dina Nina.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the I Love Funny Women podcast. I'm your host, Dina Nina, and this is Pride Month, huzzah! I don't know if you've watched the series Pride on FX or Hulu, but it is an amazing look into queer history and something I think everyone should watch. I am also so proud to be who I am and so grateful that I'm able to live my life as me. Regardless of what people say about my gender, I am a strong, powerful, and amazing funny woman. So pride to me is being able to be me and to support those in the community who don't have support and loving families and who struggle every day just to live their truth. And that goes for everyone. Even if you're not part of the LGBTQIA plus community, your expression of who you are is lovely and amazing. And if you are someone who needs more support or are having trouble living in the truth of who you are and you're a young person, you can always find resources at thetrevorproject.org. And if you're having a mental health crisis or need some help with substance abuse issues or you need to reach out to someone just to talk, you can also go to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and their number is 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357 or samhsa.gov. A huge thank you goes out to the staff of the Spay Me Clinic in Madison, Wisconsin. Thank you for listening, and thanks for taking care of my baby Gertie. We love having you listen. Also, we'd love to hear from all of you out there. So go on over to Instagram, post a video, and tag at I Love Funny Women with the hashtag HeyDina. And you could be on the podcast or even on our YouTube. And also, guys, if you could give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, it would really help us out a lot. So just go on over there, say a couple nice words, put a 5-star, and we'd be super, super grateful.
Hey, this is Door Girl Greg. Thank you for listening to the I Love Funny Women podcast. If you haven't by now, you should really go to the socials and check out at I Love Funny Women on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube, because really, what else are you going to do?
So now let's get into the news. Democratic Senators Manchin and Sinema are facing flack from the party for blocking the Democrats' agenda. The two are defending their choices to leave the filibuster intact as the Democrats fight to get anything done bipartisanly. The GOP's current tactics are to fully obstruct any and all legislative progress other than what serves their own interests and the interests of the guy who lost. As the two quote-unquote Democrats find ways to defend their choices, we can't help but be aware that if the 90s block heel shoes were on the other foot, that the GOP would not hesitate to remove the filibuster if it impeded their pursuit of white supremacy and comfort over style. Also, Birkenstocks are back. Huh? As Trump's hold on the Republican Party tightens like all white people's assholes when race relations are brought up, so too does Trump's sphincter tighten at the increasing legal hot water he's beginning to face. The Manhattan DA has brought in several high-ranking officials from the Trump Organization. His properties are losing occupants. None of his minions could read well enough to sustain his blogging, and Facebook's Oversight Committee has banned him for 2 more years. Even so, he is persisting. Despite being deplatformed on social media, the Fox propaganda machine continues to feed the falsities to his Mountain Dew-addicted adherents, who are anxiously awaiting for his reinstallment as president in August. Is that a real thing? Okay. In case you missed it, former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn appeared at the For God and Country Patriot Roundup rally in Dallas, Texas that espouses QAnon conspiracies last week. And when asked why a Myanmar-type coup d'etat couldn't happen in the U.S., he quickly said, No reason it couldn't, and wait for it, it should happen here. So let's be very clear here. Former administration officials are going on stages rallying for a literal coup. And so while we watch our democracy unravel in real time and mock Trump and his followers for the delusional idea that he could be reinstalled, it is absolutely possible here. Disclosure junkies are getting their addiction fed as the government is preparing to release a report on UAPs, or as they're more widely known, UFOs. The soon-to-be report we expected to give us a quick high will do little to satiate our need for the truth. A report has concluded that the craft that we're seeing on released Navy footage still seem to be inconclusive, kind of anticlimactic, but the consensus is that the craft are not U.S. covert operations, but could be human-made vehicles, but are most likely not extraterrestrial in nature. Most likely. Today we have UFO expert Estela Ruiz. Hi, Estela.
Hello, Dina.
So do you have any knowledge of what these craft are that the U.S. government may not know or are unwilling to disclose?
Oh, girl, they know. They know. They're just not telling us.
So what are they not telling us?
That extraterrestrial beings have been in contact with us and have been working with our government for years.
Okay, I believe that fully, but what evidence do you have of human ET cooperation?
iPhones, duh.
I mean, that could just be that we've evolved technologically.
Yeah, right. Like, we went from creating the wheel to an iPhone? Like, think about it. It just doesn't make sense. Oh, and Wi-Fi connected vibrators? I mean, what?
So how do Wi-Fi connected vibrators come into play?
Very well. Like just now, the gray aliens are controlling mine right now. They know I need the dopamine boost. Oh wait, it's happening again.
Okay, well, we'll let you go on that. Please come again.
Oh, yes. Anytime.
Thank you so much, Estela. Unfortunately, our sexologist Renee Hayden is on holiday for the next few weeks, so we'll be missing Sex with the Stars, but she'll return in July with all new insights.
I'm Door Girl Greg, and you're listening to the I Love Funny Women podcast.
So this week, I'm really excited to honor Pride Month with some of my favorite queer comics that we haven't talked to recently or that most people don't know about, so I want to get them out to you to let them know how much we appreciate them and to let you know of some funny, amazing queer people. So this week's guest, I'm so excited. She's born and raised in Dallas, Texas, my home area. She's a Latina lesbian comedian, and she started her own internet radio station in 2014. Please welcome Crist Guzman. You just got back from holiday. You were in Mexico, yeah?
Yes. I got pulled over by TSA as well.
Oh, how did that go?
No reason. I don't know if it's El Chapo, Guzman, last name, but every time it never fails. Mexico, they pull me over.
Oh my God, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it doesn't help that I have a background as well, so.
Oh, you've got a background? I'm so curious. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, that's actually where I met my wife,
Oh,
the real
in prison.
New black. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. 16 years ago? Yeah.
Oh my God.
I was young. First time mistake. And
and last time you're like, never again.
Yeah. It's like I got 18 months, but I'm doing life, because I'm stuck with her. So.
That's so awesome, though, how you met her. How did that work out? Was it you?
Yeah, she was actually in prison before me, and I was there. I was in a relationship, and then the person broke up with me, and everybody knew. They had their eyes on me, and she's a straight woman. And she, told her roommate to talk to me, send a little message, and after that, we started having dates in the chow hall, and she started cooking for me from commissary, and game over.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's really awesome that you're married now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet. So you live in Dallas, Texas, which I'm from Dallas area. It is really cool to connect with somebody from the homeland.
Yeah. Thank you. We appreciate it. We miss you.
Oh, miss you. It's Pride Month,
I know.
and
I know.
let's talk a little bit about what pride is to you.
Pride to me is being able to be my one true self and nobody looking at me a certain way. You know, it used to be frowned upon, it still is. Um, but I have people backing me up now. You know, it's, you know, people fighting for us, people noticing us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just always want to be my one true self. You know, you never know. I remember having my first corporate job and I'd have to hide the fact that I was gay. You know, the way I dress, you could tell I am, but I would flip my little ring over and just make it look like a band, or I'd put it on the opposite hand or my pinky finger, because you just never knew if they were going to judge you for that or move you up for that. So pride now, like what it means to me is just being my one true self. Like at work now we have groups and meetings and, you know, diversity. So I don't have to hide who I am. I don't have to not cut my hair, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like we have somebody to fight for us now, you know? We have partners.
That's really amazing. Because I remember, because I left Texas probably around almost 20 years ago now. And I remember it being hard to be queer because I especially growing up in the church.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about that?
Baptist, you know, my grandfather was a preacher. My whole dad's family, they run the church, secretary, pastors, assistant, like we are the church, you know?
How are they with you?
Actually, it's funny because my dad's side of the family is the side that we thought would be so judgmental. They run the church. It's literally one aunt's the Sunday school, one aunt's the, you know, choir lady, everything. And they're the most welcoming, open arms. When I had a wedding, I was scared to, you know, invite them. And they were upset that I didn't invite them to the first one, which I did in the country because that's where my wife's from.
Yeah.
And I had one in Dallas because they were so upset. And they were just open arms to this day. You know, every time I post a picture, they're like, proud of you. We love you. Now that, you know, was hard to come out to them. I still haven't came out to them about prison because they don't know. Like they were that judgmental, you know, like so they're just so supportive. And it surprises me, but it just makes my heart melt just to know that, you know.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't be scared of my own family. But that's how much in the church they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, the courage it takes to come out to your family, especially that are in traditional religious backgrounds, it's immense. You know, like I left and moved to Los Angeles to transition to become fully who I am, and that wasn't the reason. I just got there and I was like, oh. My aunt and my mom came to LA, and we were at this outdoor mall, and these guys were holding hands, and she was like, they're just holding hands out in public. And I was like, yep.
They never seen anything like it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we were talking about this a little bit before, but I really want to get into this because we have something kind of in common. We both kind of started internet radio stuff.
Yeah.
And tell me about what you
know where Waco's at, right?
Yes, I know.
Okay, some people don't know. Yeah, some people don't know, and I'm like, you know where Austin is, right? They're like, yeah, I'm like, nowhere close to there, you know. But so basically I started DJing, you know, at clubs and things like that. I love music, but I learned that I like being more on the mic. So I went to school for broadcasting, American Broadcasting School, and they would teach you how to run the boards and internet radio. So I figured it out. I started a little radio station from my house. Me and my best friend would go on twice a week, and we'd engage. We have people, you know, call us from being in the army and stuff. They were like
Oh, wow.
Korea, whatever. So Europe, they would contact us, and we'd have like an advance we'd put on Facebook. We would put like the discussions we're going to have today, so that way they knew and put their little input, and we would talk about it. So I loved it. I loved conversing. I loved laughing. Like I would do my set list pretty much and write what I was going to talk about, but the funny about it. And that's when I actually realized that I wanted to do stand-up, that I wanted to do it. I'm sorry. Can you hear my dogs?
That's fine. I can, and I love it.
I just literally got back into town, so they missed me, and I didn't want to cage them up in the kennel, but they just fight all day long. All day long, just play fight.
The Nuggets mind keeps popping up and being like, hey, I want to say hi.
Yeah, I want to see attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I love that you're doing this, the podcast. I loved meeting you. What's it been, like 3 or 4 years? Or has
Several
it been
years, yeah. Like, because we met at the Chicago Women's Funny Festival.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're from Dallas? Oh my God, I'm from Dallas.
Yeah. And I just remember, you know, I would tell my wife, because my wife is out of town right now, and I told her I was going to be on your podcast, and she's like, oh my God, I remember her. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, that's so cool. I'm like, she's doing what I want to continue doing. You know, I know I let you said you were jealous of me being there, and I started typing, but I erased it. I'm like, don't be jealous of me. I'm jealous of you, because you're doing what I want to do. And unfortunately, I have to have, you know, a 40-hour corporate job, because I'm the only income in my family, because we have a special needs daughter, my wife, when I met her. So she can't work. So therefore I have to work and try to follow my dreams. And I'm just like, it's just a lot of work. And I wish I could just fully follow my dreams. Like that's what I would want. Which that's the plan. But
yeah.
we'll yeah.
I mean, don't be too jealous. I'm applying for grants and hoping for money anything now. But there is something to be said, because like for years I would essentially work. So I waited tables for a long time. So it wasn't a full 40 hours, but it was definitely rigorous. Yeah. And then I'd turn around and take a nap and then get back up to start working on comedy and writing scripts and working on podcasts and everything. So it's definitely that hustle, right? Even now.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work. It's not saying, hey, you don't put yours in, but I know like with comedy, you're putting more than 40 hours. Like your comedy's nonstop.
All the time.
And but you're doing what you love, and that's what I want to do. You know, it's you know, I always think of being like doing Uber and working around my schedule, but that's just not the income I need. I need more to you know, to raise 3 people, to cover 3 people, you know.
To keep that cute chandelier hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah, my wife's decoration. We don't use it. I'm like, why do we not use it? She's like, it's just to look nice. Why?
Turn the bitch on occasionally. I mean,
I'm like, can we see
it? So you talked about you were doing your radio station, and that's when you realized that you wanted to do stand-up.
Yes.
What did that realization and what did that journey look like as you began?
Okay, so I've always loved stand-up. I just loved watching it. That was my happy place. And I always knew I kind of wanted to try. I just never knew I could. I didn't know what to do or what steps. And so basically when I started the internet radio station and started doing the talking, my sister passed away in that time frame. She had 3 boys, and one of the boys did not want to go to college. So she had told me, promise me you're going to make him go to college. So our discussion was, look, just go. Your mom told me to make you go. And if you don't like it, you could always change what you want to do. It doesn't matter how old you are. And he said, well, what would you do if you can change what you want to do? I said, I'd be a comedian. And he's like, well, then you're not too old. You do it. You do it. And I go to college. So that's what happened pretty much. He went to college. I started stand-up. Stand-up, as you know, it's probably harder for you. I know it's harder for you, but I'm not the look people are going for, right? You know, when you hit the stage, a guy can be whatever, how he looks, as long as he's funny. But a woman, you better look skinny, tall, sexy, attractive, and not downplaying myself. I'm just saying I'm not the look, you know?
Yeah.
So it's very, very hard. Not only that, not having the look, but being a butch lesbian. It's like anytime I hit the stage for practice, they love me. But anytime like the improv or hyenas, they're looking for somebody to open for somebody. Oh no, you're a lesbian. We only want you to open if like Fortune Feimster's here. Then I get booked
Mm-hmm.
for Fortune Feimster, and they're like, well, she doesn't want another LGBT opening for her. And I'm like, well, where do I fit? You know?
Why do
So
that's so insane that you wouldn't want somebody else that's LGBT.
yeah, well, because they say like they don't want you better than them. And nothing against Fortune, because that's exactly how it did not go down. I learned later on somebody paid the guy, the booker, to open up for Fortune because they wanted to connect. So I had already been promised the gig, and he made up the lie. And so that's when I
Mm,
got very, very discouraged, because I didn't know all this political, the way it goes. And, you know, I had a lot of people going to that show. It was like literally an hour before they
mm-hmm.
canceled on me and let me know, oh, I'm sorry, she doesn't want you to open. And I had no idea it was a lie until later on.
Mm,
Um, so that's how I started. Like I literally started, was ready to quit, because I'm like, if this is how it's gonna go, like there's no changing me or myself. Like, excuse me, my comedy will probably change, you know, as you grow and you learn, and how they
yeah.
say you figure out yourself and your words. And but it's kind of like there's no fitting, you know,
Yeah.
there's no fitting. They like you or you don't, and even if they do like you, you might not fit, you
Yeah.
know. So I found Poppy Chaplin. She's
I
ahead
love
of Queer
Poppy.
Queens of Comedy. Yes,
Yeah.
she's silly, goofy as hell. And I found her, and she gave me an opportunity. So I tour with her sometimes. So I saw that you had Dana Goldberg the other day. I love her. She's
Yeah.
one of the people that I've actually had. When I started researching that I wanted to do comedy, I started Googling like LGBT comedians, queer
Mm-hmm.
comedians, and it was Jen Kober that popped up,
Yes.
Poppy
Love Jen.
Chaplin, Dana Goldberg, obviously Wanda Sykes.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I love Dana Goldberg. Like I went to go see her in person in Vegas, her and Poppy, and I was like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
People love her. You may not be able to do it anywhere and everywhere, and now you can. You see Dana everywhere.
Yeah.
But back
She's
then it was like,
everywhere.
yeah, she is
Yeah.
raising money, helping,
Yeah.
speaking. Like, I love Dana Goldberg.
Same. Same. And when
Yeah.
I met her, like her warmth just encompassed me. And I was like, oh my God, she's like, I love her. So
Yeah.
yes. Like you, I feel that whole thing. Like nobody knows where to put me. Like they're like, so I
Yeah.
don't work in traditional comedy club settings usually. That's not been my focus. I kind of created my own thing because it's so tough. Like, and
Yeah.
I started when there were 3 trans
Nothing.
comics
Yeah.
in the world, you know, like,
Yeah.
very few of us. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to try to fight for gigs at the comedy clubs around the country. I'll just start booking my own. So that's
Yeah.
what I've been doing.
And that's how I think I'm going to have to do. And I
Mm,
mean, we have, no offense, but you know, lesbians probably have a little bit more selection than you. But I feel the same way. I was watching somebody, I don't know her name, but I think you follow her, and she was saying after years of being said no, she had to pave her own way, and now her Amazon, she got a special on Amazon or something. I was like, you know what? I need to look into that and how
yeah.
I can do my own. And I hear a
Yeah.
lot of people say that they get their own producers and cameras, and they just do their own. And I think that's what it is. We just got to create the space for ourselves.
Yeah, and thinking about it right now in this specific time in history, it has never been more accessible. Like our
Yeah.
phones can do, HD quality filming.
Yeah.
Like it's
Digital, the mics,
insane. Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
We've got these kind of platforms that help us
Yeah.
create nice audio and video, and yeah, it's amazing. So we will talk. We will touch base and try to get something
Yeah.
going together. How about that?
Yes, I do believe so. That's funny because you said it, because I was like, you know what? You should actually produce your own, like bring it together. Let's just do it and just create your different episodes.
Yeah.
Somebody reached out to Poppy and I can't remember. If I look through it, I'll look through it. But they did something in New York, and they did like a queer pride one, and it was all gay, lesbian, queer, and it was just audio. And they sold it to
Yeah.
somebody on Spotify where they get um I don't know how much on it, but just, as it's played. And it's not about the money to me, and that's what I've always said. It's letting people know who I am. I'm there. Hey, book
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
because I would love the exposure. I want to make people laugh. And you know how they say a lot of us are dark, and it's just I want to. What gets me off and it's ugly is you laughing at me or with me for that very moment. I forget, how sad I am about my sister, or how
Yeah.
lost I am, or how I felt back then when we didn't have all these people to acknowledge that we're here and we're queer.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because like you said, you lived here 20 years ago. Texas is still not there where LA is.
Yeah.
Like you still have those people that are just hurtful and horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something you go through every day, and I could just imagine, like, you just my best friend has a niece, which now is a nephew, goes by Al, and they went to New York, and in the restroom, and he said somebody was just so horrible, just saying, like, what are you doing standing in this line? You belong in that line. You want to be a boy, you be in that line. Like, and it was just like a whole breakthrough thing
In New
at the
York?
damn club. Yes. And I'm just,
Mm.
yeah, at Boxers or somewhere, some club, and they literally took him because graduation, like that was his trip that he wanted for graduation, and he was just transitioning. Um, and I'm just like, it's rough on a daily basis. It's a battle, and
Even
it's
in big cities, like when I
yeah,
transitioned, like I lost a job, I couldn't find a job, and I'd waited tables forever, like I had. So yeah, um, and I'm so fortunate that when I travel, people don't look at me and say, "You're in the wrong restroom" or anything. Like I understand
yeah,
how like I'm so grateful that I don't have to face that on a daily basis. But it's also important for us to be open and who we are and live in authenticity so that other people can find ways to work through
yeah,
their own issues around it so that other people, children, don't have to face all the
yeah.
crap that we have to face.
Exactly. Like you would hope after us game's over, but no, it's not game's over. It's still
Yeah.
there, and
Yeah.
it's sad because you don't know who it is. Like I said, Al, um, grandparents loved Al,
Mm.
and when Al transitioned, they disowned Al. Like,
Yeah.
no, you're not our granddaughter no more. Hit the highway. So every Thanksgiving and Christmas, Al is at home alone because the family is over there. And Al's parents were like, no, we'll stay home with you. It's not right. And they're like, no, I want my brothers and sisters to, keep the tradition. They go to grandparents' house. I'll stay home. And Al is home alone. Like my best friend will
Oh,
call, like, because it's still there, and it's in your own home, in your own neighborhood, your own family, your own blood, and it's just horrible. And
that makes me want to move back so I can just have Christmas for Al and
I know.
me and like
I know that my wife's like, I want a friendsgiving, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I'm like, okay,
yeah.
we'll see,
That
but you also want to travel.
that's one of those things that's so hard for especially queer people that are disowned and move halfway across the country. Well, even if you don't move halfway across the country, not having that support system, those family members who really understand and accept you, not being able to go someplace on holidays. So like your wife was saying Friendsgiving, my best friend and I had huge Thanksgivings every year. And all the go-go boys and drag queens and
It's
porn
like better than
stars,
the real one,
right?
right?
They would all come over to our house and we would have music playing, drinking, all two turkeys usually, and like so much food. And that's where, and I look back at, I've been watching a lot of like queer history stuff and watching how those who came before us that were disowned by their families, how they created community by pulling together and creating houses and creating this space of loving, of affirmation, was so inspiring.
Yeah.
Do you find that even though you have your family you're able to go to, do you find ways to kind of connect with your people that need community like that, or is that something?
Yeah, and I always invite them over to my family, to be honest with you. And it doesn't matter if you're queer or not. Like,
Mhm.
people will disown you just because you divorced your wife and they don't believe. You know
Yes.
how Latinos are. Like, for anything, they just want to X-nay on you. I'm like,
Mhm.
so
And
like
I'm white, so but that's also white people.
oh, yeah, well,
I don't
Latinos,
want
it's like,
anybody thinking that I'm Latina because like I'm the Rachel Dolezal of the Latino community. It's what.
but I'm saying, us, like
Yeah.
it's like it's an unspoken thing. Like everybody could tell from the get-go. I was a little lesbian girl. I had a chili bow haircut, wore ties on picture day, you know. But it was never spoke about. And then
Mhm.
it wasn't until I was moving out of town where my dad's like, "Are you moving because you're gay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm moving because my girlfriend's over there." Like he's like, "But you could find one here. You don't have to move." I'm like, "No," but it's like
Y'all will move for
unspoken.
puss though. Like y'all will move for
Oh
puss
my
at a
God.
heartbeat.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you. I love my family and I am so close to them. I don't know how I did it. Like 10 years I moved to Austin for my wife, and I'm just like, what was I thinking? What? But you're right. You do, and I think about it. I always tell my best friend because he's gay, and he's always just like, "Oh, this." I'm like, you know what? It's not what that is. I don't know. I'm not saying that about my wife. I'm just saying like it's not that big of a deal. It's not that serious.
Like I understand because even before I transitioned, I was the I hate saying gay boy, but like I was the one who was like my sister is a lesbian, and we were at Sue Ellen's all the time, and they were like, when you come out, are you gonna be a lesbian? And I was like, I wish. I'd prefer that over sleeping with men, but I'm unfortunately attracted to them. But and I do like my uncle's Mexican, and he will not call me by my name. He will call me by my birth name and always says, "Hey boy." And I'm like, huh? So I do get that, and I love him dearly.
Yeah.
And yeah. It is what it is, ain't it?
Yeah, I know. I know. My wife will visit some of my family and she's like, "Oh my God, how do you talk to this person?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, that's the way she is, she's my aunt, she's set in her way, she's old, and my wife's like, "No, I'm not going there. I'm not going there
Mm,
no more." And
mm.
I'm just like, there's no change in her talking to her. I mean, you want me to cut my aunt out of my life, and she's not saying anything directly to us, and it's not even about LGBT. It's like other races or whatever, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's horrible, but they're your family. So as long as I'm not letting the poison in, or it's not directly or anybody I know,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
I want to get some of that poison out of them, like
I know, and me and my wife do, and there's just nothing, and I get it. If I'm in their home, they can say what they want to, but the minute they enter my land, my property, that's when it's game over, and
right,
they can't
right.
handle it. They jet
Yeah.
so quickly because they can't handle the heat.
Hmm. Mm. God bless them. Like I want to
Uh-huh.
shake everybody and be like, "Have you actually read the red letters?" Like,
Yeah, I know, because so many of them, Trump supporters, Trump supporters. I'm like, really?
Mm,
And then my wife's family is from the country. It's Moulton. It's like an hour and a half away from Austin, Texas.
okay.
All of them, Trump on the
Mm,
yard, Trump
mhm,
flag. The minute you roll up, I'm like, do they just, and I can't
mhm.
talk much noise because my family's down the street and they're the same way.
Yeah.
But it's just like
Hey,
it made everybody separate.
mhm,
It divided us, and
yeah.
it still did, and it still does, but it's just horrible. I'm like, don't you know all this help you get from your kids is not Trump. You know, you're
Yeah.
getting the system, but you want to vote for this person that's against that.
Yeah.
But
So that's an interesting topic because like my mom, she told my sister before I came out that if I transition, she will never call me by that name or never call me she, her, right? So it took me a long time to come out to her. And when I did, like I was crying. I was like, I'm transitioning. And she goes, I just want you to be safe. And since then, she calls me Dina, I would say 50% of the time, which I can handle because I thought she would never do it. But I know that she loves me. And even though we have political discussions and like my mind is just like, what? How did I come from you? You know?
Yeah.
What are ways that how are you able to do that? Because I think it's important for us to be able to relate to all people, whether they agree with us or not. How do you do that in your life?
How do I deal with them? I do a lot of redirecting. So, it'll just be my aunt will say, "Oh, because build that wall," and all these Mexicans, and I'm looking at
You're
her
like,
and
but
I'm like, your husband's from Chihuahua, Mexico. Like, he's here under somebody else's ID, and I'll just redirect her because she's like, "Hey, do you think we're gonna get another stimulus check?" And I'm like, "I don't know. My President Biden says he is, but I mean, you didn't vote for him, so I don't know if you are." And she's one of those that believes anything she reads or you tell her, and she's like, "Oh, well, I mean, I vote for Trump, but I didn't actually go vote." And I'm like, really? So why are you running your mouth if you're not even going to take the time to go vote, but you're a Trump supporter? Like, that's the kind of people I'm dealing with, It's
yeah,
just a lot of redirecting and conversation because it's just, she'll give her points and what she believes. And then I'll tell her, well, this PPP you got and the more money you got, that's Biden. That's Biden. Who's helping you and your food stamp, that's Biden. I just let her know. Like before, it was hard to pull anything out of Trump's mouth. It was just getting a little bit from him because he was trying to get re-voted for, but it wasn't about the people. It's a lot of redirection and educating because people are not educated. They just eat the fluff and they believe anybody or anything you tell them, and then they want to say they're this way when they're really not, because they don't even know the truth. They don't even know who this person or what they're for, They just want to be that way.
You better preach. Preach to me.
I'm just it's just preaching to them.
Yeah, I love it. So let's talk about this, and this will be my final question. What's the best thing about your life as a comic? And it doesn't have to be about comedy, but what's the best thing in your life right now?
The best thing would be, just doing what I love, I love laughing. Like I really, really do. Prior to the death of my sister, I was always smiling. I was always somebody you'd want to be around. And people still want to be, they gravitate towards me. But I was like an innocent little bystander. Any conversation you had with me, you were just laughing. Like it was a story and I can deliver it. And so now with comedy, I'm finding myself again. I'm finding that little Chris prior to the loss of a sibling, and that's what I love. When I'm on that stage, I just find that and I don't want to let go of it. And that's what keeps me going is I just love being me,
Yeah. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you. I know it's going to be 10 years this year. So, yeah. She was young. She was 30. She was 30 years old. Yeah. So, it was young. It was hard. But, we're only like literally 18 months apart. And so we were raised up like twins, dressed alike, everything. So it was hard. It was like your best friend, your first love. She had my heart, everything. Anybody picked on her, I was there. But I miss her.
Do you find that comedy helps you cope with that? Find ways to deal with it? in a positive way?
Yes, I do. And I feel her. It's funny because every time I feel like I want to quit, and it hasn't been often, it was at the beginning. Every time I feel like I want to quit, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this one gig, and or I'm going to do this. And if nothing happens, or I'm like, this is the last one. I was in Houston, and it was at a hookah bar, and it was like a hip hop thing. And I'm like, after this is it. I told my wife. She's like, why? I'm just like, I just feel like it's not for me. I'm not going to get nowhere. I'm wasting our time. And after I got off the stage, they put us in a little private booth area, and 3 girls pulled up in front of us that had the other booth. One looked exactly like my sister. And I looked at my wife, and I'm like, that looks like Katrina. She's like, I know. And she told me, she was like, you needed a sign. Like, you needed a sign to keep going on. And my sister from the get-go, before she even passed, said, I think you should do comedy. She said, I think you're very, very funny. And I think there's not that many people like you, like lesbian, queer, and your voice would be good and heard. And there's so many people that are fighting to come out or to be themselves, and people that are like us, and there's not too many of our faces on that stage for them to relate to. It's just barely become very familiar to have a Latino up there, or Black, or an Asian, and so now that we finally got those colors and races out there, let's put us, let's put us up there, and that way people can have a space. And that's what I hope for.
I love it. And as we mentioned before at the beginning of the show, if you are a young person who is looking for some support and just being able to be who you are, you can find help at thetrevorproject.com. And if you are an adult who needs substance abuse or mental health care and you need some help, you can call the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357, or you can find more at samhsa.gov. Cris, thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait to see you in person and do comedy together again.
I know. You're going to have to tell me what festivals you're going to go to, so that way we can
maybe we'll talk more after this, but thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Nina. You have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
And that's all the time we have this week. Thanks again for listening to the I Love Funny Women podcast. Don't forget to find us on all the social media at I Love Funny Women, and also find us on the YouTube. This podcast was written by me, Dina Nina Martinez, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Dina Nina Martinez. Co-written by Janíce Rodriguez, who played Estela Ruiz, and you can find her on Instagram at JVR Speaks. Also check out her podcast, Defending Indiana, on all the podcast platforms. You can find our glamorous door girl Greg on Instagram at Gigi Potter. Thanks to our guest, Crist Guzman. And of course, our announcer, Crysta Garner, can be found on Instagram at Crysta Garner. This is an Artemis Glow Studio production in association with Crossover Media and AMG.